Okay, Chris, we're going to open up for questions, and I see we have a couple in there, and let's see what we have. Of course, Chris, can you give me an idea of how I might make the question a little bit bigger in the box?
Absolutely. Have you pulled it off of your panel yet?
Why, no, I haven't.
Okay. So if you click on the little arrow out of the box where it says undock pane from control panel.
This is what you were trying to tell me before, wasn't it?
It was.
Okay.
It's right next to X.
Oh, okay, I see that.
If you
Okay.
click on, if you're on the edges of that, and you kind of
Wonderful. Here we go. All righty. So the volume question you took care of. Okay. Tina is telling us, I love all of the great ideas and suggestions. Do you think these ideas will work for 7th to 8th graders also?
Yes.
Stace, yeah, I'm going to give that to Stacy, who's actually taught middle school. I have not. So Stace, tell them your experience with this.
Okay. I actually started teaching. I taught 7th grade intensive reading all day my first year in a Renaissance school. And my second year I taught 7th and 8th grade at the same school. And I used everything that I knew as a first year teacher was not only what I had learned from USF, but also what I had learned from having Mrs. Keller as a teacher. So definitely this is what I'm talking about, where you're going to need to guide them, because these are the kids that are going to say they want pizza on Fridays. So you're going to need to guide them with what's really important to them in a classroom. But they do work. I've done them myself, and now I do them in a high school classroom.
But Stacy, do you see much difference between the the emotional? I guess to me a 9th grader is just not that far removed from a 7th or 8th grader. I don't know. It just seems like they're...
No, they're not. No, that's why I was okay with transitioning from teaching middle school to high school. But I mean, the kids all want the same thing. They want rules, they want procedures, and they want you to teach them because they really do want to learn. So you have to get them to saying that or to realizing it. Think about other teachers they've had in the past and have them talk with a partner and then share that out. And then as a class discuss, how can we word this better to put it on our poster? Or how can we change it to mean this? But I definitely, it does work.
Mm-hmm. Now, Anne-Marie, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to actually chime in. Having worked with that age group as well, I would definitely agree with Stacy. You're going to have to do a lot more guiding and maybe offer examples. The visual cues, the posters, the having on the overhead, those are actually, I feel, a lot more important with that age group. So I feel that it definitely works, but the guiding and the visual cues, I would say, are more important with that age group.
Right. I think with high schoolers, it was a lot more verbal. I tended to be more verbal. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, great question. I have another one here. Oh, this is perfect. James asked, there are so many students that will say, it was good in order to avoid any issues. How can we deal with or, oh gosh, yes. I mean, I would get back, yeah, it's okay. And I think that
that's one of the things that was intimidating.
Because
that's why you have to offer those tools and explain what you mean by the questions and offer examples of how to answer them. You provide those tools to give them the phrases to use and the kind of answers you hope to receive.
Yeah, I think too that James working through it the first time, the very first time you do it, you need to work together. And what I would recommend is you have a lesson, you say, okay, at the end of this lesson, we're going to evaluate how well I did, whatever it is. And you don't give them any guidance up front, but just say, here's how, let me see what you do. And you're going to get, this sucks, you're going to get, this is good, it was okay, you're going to get all these very bland, quick answers. Then you can talk them through, all right, what do you mean by good? Tell me what you mean by good, and make it a whole group kind of discussion on getting them through good, okay, sucks, what other generic, getting them to, I guess that's what it is, getting them to move from generic to specific. It's a writing lesson.
You don't want them writing IDK. That's what I get.
IDK.
A little reading on the evaluations.
Right. Yeah, well, on the Post-it notes, yeah.
Well, you can also make it a grade, right? I mean, wouldn't you make it? Yeah, make it a grade.
I don't think that you would do that. I think with his specific question, he's speaking more to what my fear was as a straight A student. I was afraid of you saying, "Oh, she's awful. She's going to get an F," because I was, what if you put your true opinion and the teacher is upset with you? And so I guess the way that you would handle that would be your reaction as the teacher.
You have to take the negative, yeah.
Yeah, it's got to be the negative with the positive, and the way that you respond, rather, to that criticism is going to determine how safe they feel responding.
I think I put, and I'm trying to remember if I included Erin's example, the day she came up to me one day, she said, Keller, you've really been a bitch these past couple of weeks. And,
no.
Yeah, and she was right. She was absolutely right. But my reaction to it was not, "Oh, young lady, don't you speak to your teacher that way." It was, really? Tell me what I'm doing. I don't want to be that way, so tell me what I'm doing. So
Well,
the
I think,
reaction
Mindy,
to it. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember because we doing those, but there's a specificity that you're just targeting, is that you don't let someone, not asking all questions that are just yes or no, or
Right.
bubble 1 through 10. It's
Right.
the question that has to have an in-depth answer.
So it's an open-ended, yeah, you mean make sure you use
It's
an
an open-ended
open-ended.
question,
Yeah.
exactly.
Right.
That helps, true.
It is, but to make sure they give you an honest answer, it really is creating the culture of feedback that sets you up for honest answers. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, the book deals a lot with how you handle those classroom management situations where you do have negative students, and how you respond in those situations will also determine how safe your students feel being honest with how they felt about your teaching or your lesson or your unit, that kind of thing.
Safe, yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Safe. Do you feel safe offering your opinion to the teacher, or do you feel?
And I think that, I'm sorry, I think that really comes from what you do that first week of school. You really
Absolutely.
you really have to establish that culture of mutual respect and collaboration, and then you can build on the foundation that you set that first week of school.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And okay, so our next question is, have you found this process to be, this is from Cameron, have you found this process to be effective in the terms of setting expectations as a way to help prevent potential behavior meltdowns? Short answer, yes, but we're going to expand. For example, I have some students that can be a serious behavior challenge for some of my peers, and I'd like to share this as a possible solution. Absolutely. The colleague that I've been discussing had difficulties, always had difficulties with classroom management, and I begged her to do all of the steps, because I call this, in the book, I call it preemptive classroom management, is what I call it. I basically try to knock down every potential thing that kids would give as an excuse for misbehaving. The teacher doesn't like me, the teacher said this, the class is boring, I don't, so they don't think things are as boring when they are part of, when they are, first of all, when they're allowed to evaluate it. They also don't think it's as boring when they're part of setting expectations. By the time I went through this for several years, my expectations got more and more for myself. I made sure the students made my expectations more and more strenuous. So by the end, it was, okay, my turnaround time for your homework is going to be 24 to 48 hours. And that was for, I don't know how many kids I had, 200? I don't know, 180? So for myself, it also forced me to become better. Does anybody else want to chime in on the meltdowns, avoiding meltdowns?
I mean, you're going to have kids that are, that you can do everything that that's in your teacher toolkit, but I mean, there's just some kids that have things going on that are outside of your reaches. So, the overall answer is yes, you do what you can. You set that foundation, but, there's just some kids that, they have other issues.
Right,
But
and it doesn't have anything to do with you.
Yeah. Right, that's the 1%, so.
I think, Mindy, too, one thing to kind of go back to is when you are creating this environment, that especially that first week, there's an accountability, and I think sometimes other students can help with those, maybe those meltdowns, because there are some students who will be the exact opposite and take pride and really kind of take ownership of the expectations that they've taken on with you as a class. And I think sometimes you see that where you've got student support coming because you've built this safe place, you've built this place of mutual respect, and that's a thing that people will want to keep.
Too. And I want to say too that, and I don't know how to explain this without sounding really weird, but I work better with students than I have ever worked with my colleagues.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, it's not weird then.
No.
Why is that, Stacy? Why is it that, oh, never mind. Let me get to this other question.
Yeah, I don't even know how to answer it anyways.
I mean, if I think about somebody saying, okay, you're going to work with, your colleagues on this whatever committee, I just get the quizzes. But if somebody says you and your students are going to do a project okay, let's do it. Let's do the webinar.
Yeah.
We don't care what time it is, what time of night it is. Okay. For those of you wondering, came in late, it's 4 a.m. for me here. Okay. Now from Pascal, I was wondering how to convey to the students that this is our classroom rather than the teacher's classroom. What steps can be taken? Yeah, the my classroom sentiment. Oh, drives me crazy. How can we convey? Well, first of all, in the verbiage of your syllabus, that's one of the things we talk about in the book too, is that in the syllabus you're going to say, and we are going to discuss, I don't know, the transcendentalist. We are going to work together to complete a research paper. We are going to, so it's we and our as opposed to you and students. And also Daniel brings up in the book, he says that, she never said it was the students, it was our class, or it was my students. So there's an abstraction of students too that teachers sometimes do. They'll say, if another teacher asks you, what are you working on? And the answer is, the students are doing their research papers. To change the mentality to, oh gosh, we're working on this awesome research project. We, our. So I think a lot of it has to do with the verbiage that's written and spoken throughout the year. What do you guys think?
I think that's a big part. Absolutely.
I think other things too, like it could be simple things like, hey, do you guys think that this I have a lot of tables in my class, so like, hey, do you think the table with the makeup work binder works here for you? Where would it be better for you? Something simple like that where they have a say, and making sure that they have a say on what goes on the walls. So like having them make vocab cards, for whatever your content is, and then displaying their work. And again, I'm just like a really firm believer in the first week of school. One thing I did was I gave the kids Post-its every day the first week of school, and at the end of the class they had to respond to 2 questions. And so not only did I get to know them right away, but I would share some of them so that they would get to know each other. And it's just really about creating that feeling, and it's what you do that will create it. But make sure they have a say to an extent.
Do you put the Post-it notes up on the wall? I've seen that on Pinterest. Well, I'm forever on Pinterest, so I've seen that on Pinterest.
Yeah, well, I would put them on chart paper and then put the chart paper on the wall. So, and I only had 2 classes this past year because I'm the reading resource teacher, but you could totally, have 6 posters in your room and it wouldn't take up too much space, and, you would only keep it up for 2 weeks because you're always rotating their work and keeping that collaboration in that environment moving.
Crystal, I know you had a thing for the physical layout of the room. Do you think that the physical layout of the room is another way that we created that our classroom feeling?
I do. You know, it's usually the standard layout to walk into a classroom and you've got your rows where you just face forward and you face the chalkboard, you face the teacher. And what that kind of King Arthur style really does, again, I think accountability is my vocab word of the night. I hate to keep using it, but it's so true, is that you not only have interaction with the teacher, but you have interaction with the people beside you and across the room, and you're able to engage in a conversation without twisting your whole body around in a desk and leaning over someone to hear what another peer is saying. And it's essential because you get to look someone in the eye when they're talking.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great point.
Yeah. Yeah, because I always felt like the physical layout of the room, having everybody face each other, had something to do with it. And I don't know, I don't know, Anne Marie probably remembers, I used to have a podium up at the front. I used to stand at a podium.
No, you did still have a podium even in
Yeah, you did.
my first year.
But I didn't stand at it. Did I stand at it? Anyway,
yes.
I thought I had graduated. Oh dear. I was remembering wrong. I thought I had moved away from that. Oh well. Okay. I think we've got everybody's questions. We got James, Pascal, Tina, Cameron, and I think we've had everybody's questions. So Chris, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to refresh to get more, or do they just all pop up already?
Yep, the ones that are shown are the only ones that we have.
Okay.
So since we don't have any additional questions at this time, what we can do is we can plan on wrapping up shortly, but we always want to ask presenters if there's anything sort of in closing or that they thought of during the presentation that wasn't scripted that they would like to share. What are some things maybe that you'd like to share with participants that you haven't been able to so far, and then we'll sort of wrap up.
I'm thinking. I don't know. I'm trying to, one of the things that I found difficult about creating this webinar was separating it from any kind of it was like I had to pull it out of a larger clump, like it was an ingredient in a cake, for lack of a better visual. I want you to understand that this is an ingredient, not the whole. You still have to do all the other stuff. This isn't enough to have you still have to have your rules. You still have to have your procedures. You still have to consistently follow them and embrace them. And also, I wasn't able to get too much into the teacher persona here, but the teacher persona has a lot to do with it. Your attitude of receiving the criticism, and your attitude in presentation. I wasn't able to get too much into that, but this is one ingredient, and it's one that is tangible. I think it's a tangible ingredient. It's something you can take with you into the classroom and do. But I just wanted to remind you that this isn't the whole answer of everything. And also, we did want to remind you that on the handout you do have some links that will take you to some supplemental articles, and so you know that this is research based. It's not just me harping on things, and but there is some research to back up what we're talking about here. So, anybody else want to add something they wanted to bring up?
This is Anne Marie. I'll just say that this has been, a lot of fun for us to put together, and we really hope that you were all able to get something out of it that you can take with you into your own classroom. Just remember that we really do hope that you put a culture of feedback, that you incorporate it into your classroom, but we hope that you follow the steps, because we don't want you to get to that end point and try to do a summative evaluation and end up with students who don't know how to respond appropriately, because that can be difficult to accept. So, thank you for joining us. We've had so much fun, and make sure you check out the links. There's some really good stuff there. So.
Oh, we did get another question in. This is from Tina. She's asking, when asking for verbal responses, how do you keep kids quiet when the others talk? I seem to get everyone too excited and trying to talk at once. Okay. Yes. Yeah, I'm trying to remember the best sequence to tell you with this, because I at the beginning of the year, students you're in that honeymoon phase, and that's when they're kind of behaving well and they really want to, actually do what you ask them to do. So it's helpful if you have a lesson, a graded lesson on how to have a discussion with everybody, and we do outline that in Transparent Teaching. And Dita had asked about the title of the book. It's Transparent Teaching of Adolescence. And if you have a lesson on how to have a discussion, and you explain, and of course that doesn't mean that they're not going to talk over each other at some point, but you also have a backup plan for getting the class quiet on, for getting the class to come back to order, so to speak. You should be able to handle it. I think it's really more upsetting for the teacher than it is for the kids who are having the excited conversation. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because if you were excitedly talking to your neighbor or talking to each other, you didn't really notice that the whole class. I mean, you probably felt the noise, but
the energy.
But you were probably like really engaged in whatever you were saying. So I'm trying to. The way I explain it in the book is for you to consider what would happen in an adult situation. What would adults do in a situation where everybody's talking all at once? And you would most likely, if everybody was excitedly talking, you would wait until you'd look and you'd stand there as the facilitator, and you would look and you would wait until everybody had kind of calmed down. And then you would point to, I guess my point is, don't try to be too controlling. Does that make sense? It's let it happen naturally and then kind of deal with it, is my point. Does that make sense?
I think also you could, well, yeah, I think I had the same problem this year with my juniors. We would read articles from the USA Today, and then they'd get really excited and want to talk about it. So some things you can try are a think, pair, share, and I actually used a template, so they actually had to write down their thoughts, share them, and then they shared out from pairs, and then we moved on to group discussion. You could also try a ball of yarn. So you hold the yarn and you say what you need to say. You throw the yarn to whoever wants to go next, and they hold on to the yarn when they throw it. So essentially you can see at the end you have a discussion web, and it's a visual to them that, everybody needs a chance to talk so we can create one thing as a whole.
Oh, I like that. I like that.
That's a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
Nice, Stacy.
Thank you.
We also have a question from Alberta. She wants to know, do you have advice for substitute teachers who are permanent in one class until, oh, God love you, until the end of the year? First of all, thank you for what you do.
Yes.
Okay. I guess what I would recommend is that if you know you're going to be permanent, that you start as if, whenever that is, even if it's in November, you go into it as if you begin the school year again. You start over and you say, all right, let's, and you do whatever you would do as a teacher would do coming in, and begin to develop that relationship with them. I think that's part of the issue with substitute teachers is there's no relationship, but there's immediate authority. And that could be one of the reasons why it is so difficult, is because you do have to, but if you know you're going to be permanent, you can say, okay, guys, let's start anew. Let's make this fresh. I'm going to be your teacher for the rest of the year, and let's see how we can work together. I'd like to talk to you about some of my thoughts on expectations. What are your thoughts? Here are my rules. Here are the procedures. Here's how I think the best way we can work together. and just go ahead and start over. You guys have anything you want to chime in on that?
I actually have a friend that was in that situation. 2 years ago, she started in the middle of the year, and she did not present herself as the actual teacher, and it was a very difficult year. And then last year, when she had the same scenario, she went into it as, okay, I am the teacher, and she started as she was, a brand new school year, and she went over all the typical things. Of course, she had to get some guidance about, well, what would you do if you were an actual teacher, because she didn't have a teaching certificate and she had never been through the classes. But when she approached it as a teacher would at the beginning of the school year, she had a much more smooth experience. So that would be the best advice that I could give as well. So
yeah, especially if you know it's going to be permanent. Yeah,
exactly.
Now James has asked a really good. Oh, go ahead, Stace. Before we move.
Oh, I was just going to say, don't be afraid to reach out for support from department heads or resources or coaches, because their job is to help you.
Yeah. And James has asked, so many of your ideas are based in language arts and English. What do you recommend for math teachers? As far as the expectations and anything we're doing here with feedback, I'm thinking, you're welcome, Alberta. I'm thinking that is interdisciplinary, I think. I'm not sure. I want to make sure I understand. Anything to do with classroom management, I
think he's thinking, like, because we've said, like, sharing discussions,
oh,
and maybe they may not have those as much in math, so maybe there's more collaboration, so maybe you would have to set expectations for when they're collaborating in groups or when you're working on projects with manipulatives. But essentially, you want to have the same, like Mindy just said, the interdisciplinary foundations of classroom management.
So it's the middle step that he's talking about that's more difficult for him, because obviously setting expectations they can do, and they can do end of year, but it's the formative stuff that is more difficult. Well, I guess, in math teacher, it's been too long, you guys. I haven't taken math in 2 months. So, but I know that sometimes math teachers do give presentations, and they explain how to work through something. You could definitely do a preemptive. Okay, I'm going to explain this geometric proof. I don't know. I'm going to explain this. So let me know how I do with my presentation if I'm clear. Or at the end of it, you could do the post-it note idea. I guess too, on a 1-minute paper, you can even have them have a specific question, like a core question. I'm thinking of the math. Gosh, I wish I could help you more with this. I am just so far removed.
That sounds to me like a good blog post, or a question that we could post and maybe someone else could help, or we could maybe think about it more, look into some of the standards. And
yeah, I'd need to talk. Yeah, I'd need to talk with a math teacher who has used these ideas. Oh, Pasquale has said for an idea to use an exit slip, which is kind of what our 1-minute papers are.
And Post-its.
And as a formative on there.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Think pair shares also work very well in math classrooms, because they do need to think about the problem. They can work together, and then they can share their responses. So that's also something that works well in math.
Well, Anne-Marie, your oldest is in 5th grade, 6th grade?
She's in 7th grade.
7th grade. Oh, she's a big girl. So in your math class with her then, what are you seeing as some possibilities for helping?
We do a lot of think pair share. We do post-it notes, as Stacy said. We do a lot of discussion, actually. Where do you think the foundations for these mathematical equations came for? How do you think they're helpful? That kind of thing. And so I think that a lot of the same principles that we've spoken about already can easily be applied to the math classroom.
Okay, great. Okay, any other questions? Going once. Pascal says thank you. I wish we had a chat feature for you guys. This is very awkward. Well, that's why I wanted to use the Twitter, but nobody really used it, so that's okay.
Well, and don't forget, guys, that you can find us on Pinterest. We're on Facebook. We have a blog. So if you think of questions when you're falling asleep tonight,
Get
or when you wake
online.
up, get online and send them to us.
Well, also, I'll be looking at the KDP. That's something I'll be logging into, the KDP resources, too. Chris, is there anything else that we need to cover? Alberta says thank you, too. Oh, she said that before.
Welcome.
There's not anything left for me to cover. I just have a very short note that I read in closing, if we're ready for that.
Oh, wait, I have one more thing. Cameron says, thank you so very much. I do a lot of this already, and I feel better prepared to face my second year as a teacher. Awesome.
Yay!
Wow.
Okay, I think we're ready now. Good.
All righty. And thank you to all of the presenters tonight. I think it was fun and interactive for everyone. I do want to thank all the participants for joining us this evening. In about an hour, you'll receive an email with a brief exit survey that we ask for you to complete. Your feedback is very important to us and to the presenters, and it helps us improve future events. This does wrap up tonight's presentation, and we ask that you join us on Tuesday, July 9th for a presentation that you don't want to miss. Our next webinar on classroom management for grades 3 through 6, titled Let the Fun Begin. Have a wonderful evening.
Thanks, everybody.
The organizer.